Welcome back, capital F football fans, to the O&O Sports YouTube channel. It feels good to be back in our studio with the power back on. And today we are looking back at a nuclear week 6 of the 2024 college football season. 6 top 25 teams went down this week, nearly 7, but Miami was able to pull it out in controversial fashion again this week. Without further ado, let's talk about our predictions this week. If you have not heard, we are potentially giving away $100 to one of our subscribers. If you want a chance at winning, be sure to follow us on our social medias. Links to those will be in the description down below. But that is only if we do not correctly predict over 75% of the college football games correctly this year. And all the upsets this week did mess us up a bit. We ended up predicting 34 of the 49 games correctly this week. And that brings us to 290 of 382 correct predictions on the year for a winning percentage of 75.9. Still just barely over that 75% threshold, but you now have a much greater shot at that $100, so be sure to follow us and stay tuned for our updates. And next in this episode, let's revisit our big impact matchups from this week, starting with Iowa at Ohio State. We predicted this one to be Ohio State 35-14, and it was Ohio State 35-7. This went about how we expected it to. Iowa was able to keep it close for a half, but Ohio State's firepower allowed them to kick it into another gear in the second half, and the Buckeyes were able to stomp out the Hawkeyes off the back of a great performance from Will Howard. He went 21-25 for over 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. Next, let's look at Ole Miss at South Carolina. We thought this one would be much closer. We had it Ole Miss winning 28-21. The final score was Ole Miss 27-3. We were really let down by the Gamecocks this week. The offense just could not pull their own weight. And on defense, they didn't have the worst game, but still left a lot to be desired. Not a good showing from the Gamecocks, but give it to Ole Miss. They were able to bounce back in this one and have a very strong performance, especially on defense after struggling a week ago versus Kentucky. Next, let's look at Rutgers at Nebraska. We thought this one would be in favor of the Cornhuskers 21-16, and Nebraska did end up winning 14-7. This one was not the game we expected. The conditions were just not it, and they caused both teams to have very sloppy performances. But Nebraska's defense looked very strong against a Rutgers offense who has been able to put up strong performances on the ground. They held Rutgers to under 100 yards rushing this week, with Kyle Monangai only averaging 4 yards per carry. They sacked Ethan Kaliak-Manis 4 times and held Rutgers to 2 third down conversions on 14 total attempts in the game. Next, let's look at Tennessee at Arkansas. We predicted Tennessee to win this one 31-23, and this was one of many upsets of the week. Arkansas ended up beating previously number 4 ranked Tennessee 19-14. We said this one could go either way, and for the Volunteers, it went the wrong way. Tennessee was able to get it working on the ground, which isn't what we predicted. We thought they would lose if they couldn't get it going on the ground, but ultimately the penalties and the quarterback play from Arkansas is what turned the tide in favor of the Razorbacks. Arkansas was able to control the pace of this game, and a strong day from Taylon Green is what we warned could tilt this in favor of the Razorbacks, which it indeed did. Next, let's look at Baylor at Iowa State. We predicted Iowa State to win this one 24-14, and it was Iowa State 43-21. Baylor honestly did not have that bad of a game offensively. Sawyer Robertson played a great game, but they just were not able to extend drives and could not establish the run game, which led to Iowa State dominating this one on offense. Rocco Becht looked solid in this game, but the rushing attack for the Cyclones was phenomenal. They had over 250 rushing yards on the day. They punted exactly 0 times, and they were able to dominate the line of scrimmage, which is what led Iowa State to the big victory at home. Next, let's look at Michigan at Washington. We predicted this one to go in favor of the Wolverines 27-17, and we got the score right, but we did not get the winner right. Washington ended up winning 27-17, and we tried to warn ourselves before this week. We said the word was out on Michigan, and Washington was able to contain that high-powered Michigan run game just enough to steal a victory in one of the many upsets this week. Will Rogers played phenomenal, but most importantly, Washington was able to force the hand of Sharon Moore and make Michigan throw the ball, which we know they are not good at doing. They actually brought in their third quarterback of the season, Jack Tuttle. who looked about just as bad as the other two, and that allowed Washington to win this one at home. And for your O&O Sports Game of the Week, it was Missouri at Texas A&M. We predicted this one to go in favor of Missouri 30-20, and the final score was Texas A&M 41-10. We could not have gotten this one more wrong if we tried. Texas A&M went out and dog walked the Tigers in what looked like the best matchup coming into this week. Missouri had no real answer for Texas A&M's defense. Brady Cook looked pedestrian, and they could not get anything going on the ground. And we knew A&M's defense was good coming into this one, but we didn't know they were that good. And that's the same for their offense. Le'Veon Moss got going this week in what has been his best performance so far this year. Over 160 total yards on the day and 3 touchdowns to cap off a blowout win for the Aggies. And since we're doing this episode a little bit differently, we're going to take a look at some upsets this week instead of our usual team and player of the week. Starting with SMU over Louisville. Not a lot of people talked about this one, but this was a top 25 upset. We said in this game we trusted Louisville a little bit more than we did a scorching hot SMU team, and they did go out and have a pretty solid game, but our trust should have been in SMU. They were just a bit more productive and a bit more efficient on offense. This was a great matchup, but SMU showed they're a contender in the ACC and ended up with the W. Next, let's talk about Minnesota going over USC. We did not see this one coming at all. A few weeks ago, we picked Minnesota to beat Iowa, and they ended up getting handled. So we lost faith in the Gophers, but they went out and stole this one from the Trojans. They picked Miller Moss off twice and forced this into a battle in the trenches, which they ended up winning along with the game itself. This is a very important win for Minnesota's season. They were looking like they were going to be 2-4 heading into the back half of the season with some pretty difficult games the rest of the way. Now they're 3-3 and a bowl game looks manageable for the Gophers. And last, the biggest one of them all, Vanderbilt over number 1 ranked Alabama. We don't want to say we called it because we didn't, but we kind of did. Without Todd, we were forced to kind of wing it on Upset Watch this week. So we put Alabama at a 1 out of 10 against Vandy. We figured Vandy might cover the 22.5 point spread. We like their offense, but they ended up going out and beating the number 1 team in the country and what is probably the best win in Vanderbilt's history. And moving on into our top 25, we had a tough one this week. There was a lot of movement everywhere. Starting with teams who dropped out this week, it was Michigan, USC, UNLV, and James Madison. In the midst of a number of upsets, one that no one is talking about is James Madison losing to the University of Louisiana Monroe in football. I mean, how much crazier does it get? They obviously fall out of the top 25, and now at 25 we have the SMU Mustangs. Great win over Louisville, as we previously went over. At 24, we have Washington. They beat Michigan, and they've been a team on the cusp for us in the top 25 now, and they're finally in at 24. Next, we have Illinois moving up 2 spots to number 23. Kansas State at 22, moving up 1 spot. Pitt jumping into the top 21. They're 4-0 going into a game versus the Calgorhythm next week. Should be a good one. At 20, we have Boise State moving up 1 spot. Ashton Jeanty should be your Heisman favorite. At 19, we have Missouri dropping 8 spots. They'll drop all the way down to 19 because that's what happens when you get boat raced. At 18, we have Indiana moving up 2 spots. They're undefeated and bowl eligible heading into a bye week. What a season already for Kurt Cignetti and the Hoosiers. At 17, we have Texas A&M jumping into our top 25. They'll jump all the way up to 17 because that's what happens when you boat race a top 15 team. Next, we have BYU moving up 3 spots to 16, Oklahoma moving up 2 spots to 15, and Notre Dame moving up 4 spots to number 14. All these teams move up mainly because teams above them lost. Next, we have Tennessee dropping 9 spots to 13. They'll drop out of our top 12. Maybe should be further, but they didn't look terrible in the loss, so we only have them moving down single-digit spots this week. Next, we have Utah and LSU moving up 2 and 4 spots to 12 and 11. And at 10, we have Alabama. We are truly living in a college football 25 simulation right now. Alabama is your 10th ranked team, and Iowa State is your 9th ranked team, to add emphasis to that last statement. Who would have thought Iowa State would be ranked above Alabama at all this year? Next, we have Ole Miss moving back up to number 8. They had a great bounce back win over South Carolina to bump them up this week. And we have Clemson moving to number 7. They beat up on a sorry Florida State program. The final score truly does not do that one any justice. Next, we have Miami staying still, surprisingly, at number 6. And we're side-eyeing Miami this week because it's marked 2 weeks in a row now that they've magically escaped the claws of defeat. We're not sure what kind of voodoo they're doing down in South Florida, but for now, we'll keep them at 6. Jumping them, we have Penn State at number 5 and Oregon at number 4. Penn State didn't have the strongest performance this week. They actually got outgained on the ground by UCLA, surprisingly. And Oregon looked somewhat shaky, at least from our preseason Heisman pick in Dylan Gabriel. Both teams still got the wins, and more importantly, there doesn't look to be any real candidates above them this week, so they both move into our top 5. And at 3, we have Georgia moving up 2 spots. Who would have thought they'd be back in our top 3 already? But here they are, and our top 2 will not change. It will be Texas at number 2 and Ohio State at number 1. And we are undefeated against the haters. Many people were upset we did not put Alabama at 1 last week. And now we are completely vindicated. Ohio State is our top team this week, and this whole mini rant will definitely not come back to bite us in the future. And that's going to do it for this episode. We hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, be sure to like and subscribe, and be sure to tune in later this week for our Week 7 preview. Thank you for watching, and we will see you then.